Hey, what's up, guys? This is Kyle Jones, and welcome back to the Jonesin for the Outdoors podcast. Hey, this is week 2, and I'm actually managing to get another day in here. So, really glad you guys are with us. I've got a really exciting kind of lineup for us today. I am super excited. Counts of Spring Chinook over Bonneville are looking fantastic, and I'm just super jacked to have this fishery back. And with that said, I'm going to start Springer fishing next week, so I'm pretty jacked. So today's show, all about Spring Chinook, Idaho Spring Chinook. I'm going to talk about pretty much rigging. I'm going to talk about boat fishing, whether it's like anchored up in the confluence, back trolling, back bouncing. I'm going to show you guys a plunking rig for the bank. I'm going to show you guys my bobber setup, and then I'm also going to show you guys my old school drift rod for those of you guys that want to fish the South Fork of the Clearwater, want to fish the little salmon, the Maine salmon, that kind of stuff. So some super cool information coming. So anyway, guys, just really stoked that you're here, and we appreciate it. Let's just go ahead and get into it. Hey, I'm just going to kind of build this from like what we do early in the year and sort of build it through to where, you know, the fishery's pretty much, you know, like the little salmon or the South Fork. So, starting off, I personally will start fishing for springers as soon as 100 go over lower granite, and I'm hoping that's going to happen tomorrow. 100 and something went over Little Goose yesterday, so hopefully tomorrow is the number at which I'm going to say go. I'm going to start running trips. I'm going to start running trips on the 10th. Then I got a couple of days of walleye fishing I got to go do. And then I'm going to be back to running full-on springers starting the 15th. So, and I think that's going to be great. We're going to have a bunch of fish around. But just kind of the progression. We normally start early in the year. We're down there around Lewiston. And then we just sort of follow those fish up the Clearwater. Half of those fish in the Clearwater are going to the Orofino area. The other half are going on up. So we guide from Orofino Bridge down, so most of what I'm talking about is the lower river stuff, but then I have also personally fished for years on everything. And then later in the year, we make our family salmon camp over on the salmon. So I got a ton of information, grew up fishing that. So, you know, I've been doing Spring Chinook is my absolute favorite thing. It's the one thing that really got me into even wanting to start guiding. So, to me, it's like the creme de la creme. It's the most cool. It's the most important. It's like what, as Idaho salmon and steelhead fishermen, it is like our number one bread and butter, just amazing season. I love it that much. Like, I got a degree in fisheries because of Spring Chinook. I got all these things, like these springers and me, it's almost a spiritual connection. So, it's not, obviously, because there's only one place that could be, but that's the kind of passion I have for them. So next week we're going to start down around Lewiston, and I'm actually going to throw a couple of things in here as we go along. But I guess we'll just start off with, we'll start down around Lewiston, that train bridge, the pond, whatever you want to call it, that fishery. It's an anchor fishery, and there's a number of different setups that work really well in there. And I'll go ahead here. I got all this stuff rigged up. I got a pile of rods. But so main setup, I guess, at the confluence. There's a couple of them, or not the confluence, but the train bridge. You're gonna see a ton of guys, a ton of people anchored up, fishing quick fish. Quicks down there, wrapped quick fish are probably the number one bait. Absolutely fantastic. A lot of times, this is actually my diver and bait rod, so I grabbed the wrong one. But you guys will see what I'm talking about here. Quicks, right here. Quick fish, flatfish, Brad's killer fish. To me, they're all, I just talk about them like they're quicks. Some of my actual favorite plugs are not even quick fish. They're just the M2 and the T50 flatfish from Yakima Bait. They're absolutely my favorite. They're almost impossible to get right now, but almost every one of those things fishes right out of the package. But you'll see everything here. We'll be running quicks, bait wrap, My favorite thing to bait wrap is with tuna. So easy. I can have a bunch of cans of tuna in my boat. But guys will run sardines, herring. So my setup all starts, pretty much every rod setup for me starts with a slider. That's one of the line lock sliders from VIP. It just needs a snap. But the slider, see if the camera can focus, bead chain swivel, and then down to the snap and everything. That's the basis. So I can take this and go from running quick fish to immediately putting on a diver and bait rig or a herring rig. So in the pond, I'll be anchored up, running quicks, and then so a lot of times I afford the advantage where I'll have a bunch of rods out. So I'll start out down there, I'll be anchored up, and quick fish will be out, usually out my back rods. I'll have probably 3 or 4 rods at least out the back that are running quicks. Some of those will be on divers, some of them will be on lead. And then I will have my closer rods rigged up with a herring setup. So for herring, let this camera come in. We're running same swivel, all that stuff. Swivel on a slider. For herring, I'm running about a 16-inch dropper. So the dropper is, shop's not quite tall enough. The dropper is the amount of space between my slider and my lead. Okay, I'm gonna run 8 to 10 ounces or whatever it takes to get me on the bottom, and got 18 or 19 inch bumper to a short bust flasher. That one right there is a killer. And then I don't know, on herring I kind of like a long leader, so it's, I don't know, it's probably 40 something inches, and with one of these Dick's sure spin helmets on there, and then either a treble rig or a 3-hook herring rig. So that's my setup. In this size, this is the small. I'll fish a lot of red labels. I like the smaller herring for springers. Green labels are great too, but reds for me are where it's at. I like that little bait down there doing its thing. But so when I'm fishing this setup, since we're actually on anchor down there, the current is what's going to work this setup. So all I'm doing is I'm going to drop this to the bottom. I'm going to slowly work it out a little bit, and then I'm going to set it to where as I reel up, my lead is just barely off the bottom. And then I'm going to let the current sit there, work that flasher, and then the herring spin behind it. So that's kind of that setup. You'll see a lot of guys fishing herring like that down there. And then also you can fish this rig with a diver too. I could clip a jet diver on here, run this out, and fish it as well. So that setup works, for spreading rods out, doing all that. But a lot of fish down there will come on herring. A lot of fish down there will come on quick fish. So it helps to have both of them out at the same time. And I will almost always have both of them out. There's days where it's all quicks. There's days where it's all herring. So that's herring colors, flashers. It's hard to beat this electric pole dancer, the Sweet Abby. There's just, I don't know. There's so many different colors out there, and it's really personal preference. It seems like with springers, anything chartreuse, or then like if it's real sunny out, the mirror finishes, with maybe a little bit of plaid pattern on there or something like that. There's a fish flash one called High Octane that's just killer when the sun's out. Unbelievably killer. So that's a fish flash by Yakima Bait as well. But this one's a short bust. And you guys, especially around Lewiston or anything, you guys, stuff is hard to come by right now. And if you're wanting to get stuff, North 40 made sure I was in there just the other day, and they had a really good supply of flashers and plugs, and they were pretty well set up. I think they're probably going to be about the best spot in the valley to get anything. They're doing a really good job of listening to us. They've reached out to us a couple of times just to see what needs to be in the store, and so that kind of stuff is there. So if you're needing stuff and you're around Lewiston, you better get down to North 40 and get it, because I guarantee you once this gets rocking and rolling, nobody's going to have any gear. So that's just my advice. And then on all of these rods, my trolling setups, my anchor setups right now, this year, and I'm just going to do it. So now that I'm telling you guys, this will be my commitment. I've always in the past gone back and forth between mono and braid. And it's been really hard for me. You know, they both have advantages. There's some disadvantages to both. But this year, I'm just making the commitment. I'm just going to run 100% mono through the entire salmon season and then make up my mind. There's a lot of times where I feel like the stretch in mono is going to be a huge advantage in landing fish. Because, yeah, there's just times where you get a real hot fish right at the boat and you just need that stretch. Also, it's really easy to work with. Braid can be a pain. And then, yeah, so I don't know. We're going to run it to the end of the season. We'll see what I think. You'll probably hear in a podcast if I decide to get rid of it. So, but anyway, yeah, it's going to be mono for me on all my salmon stuff. All my salmon rods with mono, I run straight 30-pound big game, Berkeley big game. To me, I like it the best. A lot of guys will run Maxima, Ultra Green. My problem with Maxima is you guys know I fish in the summer a lot. And for whatever reason, Maxima, if you leave it in your boat and it gets really hot out, it gets super weak. I've had a bunch of break-offs and stuff after Maxima was in one of leader rolls or something were in my boat and it got hot. Big game doesn't seem to do that as bad. I don't know what it is, but that Maxima, it's a really, really good cold water line. But when it's hot, I don't know. I don't know what causes it to do that, but it does. So I like Berkeley big game. It's cheap, strong. You can get it anywhere. It's my go-to. So that's pretty much my my setup for the Train Bridge area. I'll spend a little bit of time down there if the fishing's really good, but honestly, I don't like having to get up super early and get down there and fight for an anchor spot. So, you know, as soon as those fish start getting upriver a little bit, I'm gonna be upriver. I really like the clear water from Lewiston up to Orofino. There's so much really good water to fish, and you know, I don't have to, most of it's back trolling and back bouncing, and so I don't have to be anchored up down there in the spot, you know, at 2 o'clock in the morning. So I got kids, I want to coach baseball, I want to sleep, so you'll find me upriver more. So moving upriver, once the fish start to move upriver, and this year if the water's really low, so it just depends. When the water's high, it seems like the fish spend a lot of time down around the confluence. When it's low, they'll actually they'll mill around in the Snake. And when Washington used to open up the Washington side of the confluence, it was just an absolute bloodbath when the water was low. We were able to troll and we would just smash them. But since that's not open, a lot of those fish are going to sit down there. They'll poke into the clear water and then they'll back out. But then as the water temperature starts to stabilize, they'll end up getting used to it and they'll shoot up. So once those fish get upriver, it's back trolling time. And my two number one setups is I'll go back to fishing quicks. Quick fish, bait wrap quick fish up there on jet divers, 50 jet divers, and depending on the current, it's just something you kind of got to get used to. Sometimes the 50s are too much. If my gear's getting hung up too much, if the water's low, I'll go to smaller jet divers. I'll go to like the 30 or the 40, and sometimes on the quick fish rods, that ends up being a little bit better of a setup. But, so jet diver and quick fish, if it's a shallow spot or we don't need a whole lot of diving depth, there is nothing better than watching a plug rod get just smashed with just a flatline quick. Nothing better than that. My absolute favorite bite on the planet is a flatline quick getting just demolished by a big old king. It's the coolest bite ever. So, hopefully we'll have some video of that kind of stuff later in the year. So quick fish, bait wrapped always. I never fish a quick fish without a bait wrap. Always, always, always. And my pick is tuna. So easy to deal with. So easy to deal with. That's why I like tuna. So, moving on. Next rig, also probably could be considered a number one, is in the clear water, in the springtime, jet divers and eggs. 50 jet diver. That's the big one. A long leader, wingspan. I just take my wingspan down to a big corky. You guys see that there? Down to that big corky. And a treble. That's my diver and bait setup. It's tied on a loop, so that all I have to do is open that up. I open that up, I drop my eggs in the loop, and then I've got that treble hook hanging back there in the back with the corkies in there in the middle. Those are corkies, I think. But or Bomax, drifters, whatever they are. Cheaters, that's what they are. They're cheaters. With the cheaters on there, it floats the hook up so that it rides. Everything just rides like this, and I think it gives them a little target. So that's I mean, a huge percentage of my fish in the spring are going to come on a diver and egg rod. Like a huge percentage. It's my absolute favorite. Back trolling period for Spring Kings is my favorite thing to do. I mean, we just kick back, you're watching, you get the lines in, and just rod takes off. So, again, mono. I want the shock. I want that. One tip for you guys when you're fishing quick fish and when you're fishing, well, any bait for that matter at all, whether it's a herring or it's a quick or it's eggs, is don't touch your rod until it is just completely, utterly buried. You just watch them whop, 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 and just leave it alone. Let them just absolutely crush it. Line peeling off, and then go get it. In the heavy current that we fish in, there's no amount of hook set or anything that you're going to do at that point that's going to let you hook the fish. You just got to let those things eat it, and once they eat it, keep the line tight and party on. But don't grab a bait rod too early. Even if you think it's getting pecked at by chubs or something like that, I can't tell you how many times I've watched it just tum, 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 and you couldn't tell if it was a chub or salmon, and then just whop, 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 all of a sudden there it went. So don't touch them. Sit on your hands. If you're drinking beer, finish your beer, then grab the rod. But diver and bait, absolutely critical. Love it. Tons of diver and bait fishing in our future, guys. If you're booked with me, we're going to be doing a lot of it. Moving on. Once the fish move upriver, there's some bank fishing opportunities that come up here. So, bank fishing on the salmon or the clear water, there's a ton of opportunity for it, guys. You don't have to go be a bank guy and have to sit in the crowds and fish with everybody else. You can go find a nice spot where there's a current break, where you can get to the water, and you guys can fish and you can plunk and fish almost by yourself, just with your crew, and actually do really, really well and have just an amazing time. I have done so much plunking on the Clearwater, and it's still to this day one of my absolute favorite things to do. We can go down there and fish, and the kids can hang out, they can throw rocks. It's just like a little party atmosphere, and then when one of these rods pops off, it's a mad dash for it. But so anyway, same exact setup though as before. This is I would plunk with, I can just grab a rod out of my boat and go plunking with it. I run a slider. I've got that same line lock slider, a bead chain, a snap, and then another bead chain. And then on this setup, I'm almost always running a 2-hook rig, 2 3/0 Gamakatsu octopus hooks, and I think that's a number 2 spinning glow with 5 or 6 5mm beads in between it. And on that, I'll run a tuna ball or I'll run an egg ball. So, but when I'm plunking, so when I'm back trolling, I'm almost never putting my eggs in a mesh in a spawn sack. When I'm plunking, they're always in a spawn sack. The P-mouth are unbelievably crazy, especially on the Clearwater, and they will just peck your bait until it is gone. And you'll go through more bait than you ever thought possible just to try to keep those little things off there. So, tuna balls are awesome. A lot of guys, I've watched tuna balls outfish eggs, but tuna and then egg balls. And then also there's a lot of guys that'll fish a coon shrimp. So any of those setups work. But yeah, all it is get a current. So when you're plunking, what you got to look for is you got to have some sort of bend in the river, a point, anything like that that gives you a current break. Because when the water's high, the spring Chinook, they run up the banks. So you get that current break, get in behind it. You know, a lot of times we're only throwing not even 20 yards off the bank. A lot of times not even that far, like flopping it just on the other side of the bushes. Super tight to the bank. And then you just got to find the travel lane. And so, yeah, you just get in there and put heavy enough lead on. Some guys will even tape a rock. A lot of guys do that. They'll get a rock and wrap it with electrical tape and throw that out there. Or I like using lead because then I don't have to worry about finding rocks. And I think I land more fish because I don't have rocks dragging around, but rocks are way cheaper than lead. So, you know, anywhere from 4 to 10 ounces. Sometimes it takes a lot to hold in certain places. Sometimes it doesn't. So you just have to play around with it. You want just enough lead on there so that it stays stuck to the bottom, but when a fish picks it up, they start bopping downriver with it. And a plunking bite is kind of cool. So your rod will be bent over, and you pound in a rod holder or build a pile of rocks and shove it. I'll recommend take some chunks of PVC pipe with you and build a pile of rocks, and then just shove your PVC pipe in the rocks. And then stick your rod in the PVC pipe. It's way better than shoving your rod down in the rocks and getting it all beat up. But plunking bites are pretty darn cool because the rod will be loaded up and it'll just be hanging out, right? And then all of a sudden you see the weight lift up. A lot of times you'll see like a bump, like the initial bite, like bump, and then the weight lifts off the bottom and the rod will just start bobbing like this. And then it's as crazy and as fast as you can get to it. And when I'm plunking, I'm setting the hook. We're off to the side of the fish. I want to get the slack out of the line, and I'm setting the hook, and I'm going to put the wood to it and get that fish into the bank as fast as possible so that it doesn't get out in the main current and end up ripping off a whole bunch of line and not getting him. So it's big time to make sure you get their heads turned and get them in toward the bank. But yeah, guys, if you're bank fishermen, early in the year, there is a ton of opportunity to catch a lot of salmon plunking. My first fish of the year almost always comes plunking. For whatever reason, the early ones will end up blowing in. They'll get past the fleet down there at the train bridge. And, you know, there's a couple spots that guys that know. I mean, we've got those travel lanes dialed in, and the plunking can be really, really good. So that's my boy. I love plunking. I might even go plunking tomorrow. There's a chance, right? So, yeah, but that's plunking. So bank fishing, awesome way to do it. Hanging out. You don't have to worry about a lot of other people. It's just you and your buddies chilling on the river. I think it's one of the greatest things ever invented. And it works for steelhead too. But moving on here. So we're still on the getting upriver on the clear water. This works really well on the salmon too. Whoop, whoop. I just told you the plunking's my favorite thing ever, and I told you right before that the back trolling was my favorite thing ever. Really, every technique's my favorite thing ever to get springers. But if I had to pick one way to catch salmon for the rest of my life, it would be vertically back bouncing in the deep holes on the clear water. I don't think that there's anything cooler than dropping a big lead to the bottom in 40 or 50 feet of water, hopping it along as you try to stay vertical with it at the boat. And one of those fish climbs on it, and it's straight up and down. Just whack! You know, there we go. Big old bite. When plunking, when back bouncing, super simple. Swivel, rigged up as a slider with a bead. That way a fish can bite this, and I can feel him, and he doesn't quite feel the weight. And then a fairly short leader, 30 inches maybe, not even, 28, 30-inch leader, 3/0 Gamakatsu hook, and a chunk of eggs, or tuna balls, or coon shrimp, or, right? You can back troll quick fish too. You can back troll or back bounce the herring. But my setup on my back bouncing rods, I have different rods. This is where things start to get a little different. My trolling rods are all soft action, moderate action trolling rods. They're meant to really load a bait up, let the fish chew on it, then start peeling line. And they're all long, 9 to 10.5 feet. My back bouncing rods they're 8.5 or they're 8'2", extra fast action, heavy action rods. These rods are built for this. This is actually the one by G. Loomis. It's the Mag Medium Extra Fast. What is it? It's the 982C 12 to 25 pound, half to 5 ounce rod. It's a killer back bouncing rod. And we'll load 10 ounces of lead on these things, even more sometimes, and to get into these holes. So heavy lead, getting in those deep holes, back bouncing has to be probably my #1 favorite way to fish. So if it was me fishing every day, this way, rods in your hand, they chew on those eggs, you just gotta hammer them, man. It's so cool. My buddies will know. We love it. So Salmon River, there's some killer back bouncing water, like killer. Clearwater, unbelievable back bounce water. Super, super cool. Any of those big, deep swirls. It's actually the reason that they kicked us out of Big Eddy, is because we used to get in there back bouncing, and I mean, it was just stupid good. But those fish would get in there, and your bait wouldn't even hardly hit the bottom. But can't fish in there anymore because we blow through the quota too fast. So anyway, maybe someday we'll have enough fish and we'll be able to get back in there, because that place is really cool. But there's other spots, guys. Any of those deep swirly holes, there's nothing wrong. Sometimes, especially middle of the day, those fish will run right up the gut of the river, get out of the sun, and they seek that deep water and want to hide. So we get them in there 50 feet sometimes. It's awesome. But yeah, back bouncing eggs, one of my favorite things. Absolute favorite things. Also, as we move upriver, there starts to be more, as the fish get upriver, especially they get up toward the North Fork, they get above the North Fork, they get up toward Clear Creek, in the South Fork. If they're on the salmon, you're getting up toward the mouth of the little salmon, you're fishing in the salmon, and even later in the year, guys fishing on the South Fork of the salmon. There's going to be two main techniques that you see guys doing. They're going to be fishing bobbers, and then they're going to also be drift fishing. So I'll show you guys my bobber setup here. I love bobber fishing. I love standing on the banks of a beautiful Idaho River and feeding a bobber setup through a hole. But this also works really good in swirls too. There's some spots like Big Eddy where the guys on the bank do really, really well bobber fishing in there. So my setup is pretty simple. Depends on the hole. I've got a bobber stop, small bead, large bead, got a 1 ounce salmon float, a 1 ounce weight, and then I like to run a 2-hook setup. Those are two 3/0 Gamakatsus on 30 pound mono leader. My main line on my bobber rods is 50-pound braid. The braid with a bobber, it floats. There's no stretch. It can be out there till there's no line on the spool, and I set the hook, and wham, we're on. So that's the way I like to do it. Bait-wise, some guys will fish, just that rig with a tuna ball, a ball of eggs, it's killer, and then a lot of times too, like a jig, like a 1/2 ounce or a 3/4 ounce marabou jig, bucktail jig, tipped with a coon shrimp, or guys will use tuna balls to tip them too. So there's some even more detailed stuff that happens up on the North Fork off the dam. Some of those guys are using surf rods and like 5 ounce bobbers, and it's actually really, really cool. But this is just kind of your basic bobber rod for anywhere that you might have a chance to fish bobbers. So where I like to bobber fish at is any of those holes that are kind of swirly, where there's not like a defined drift. It's swirling around. Those fish could be in there anywhere. The float, you just dump that thing in there with a bait, and it can work the seams and just kind of move and get it in there, and it can be absolutely killer. But yeah, bobber fishing for springers, amazing. Amazing, amazing, amazing. And then that leads me to, you guys, I grew up fishing the little salmon. So, and if you've ever been there, it is one of the kings of combat fishing. Unbelievable. People stacked on top of each other, all drift fishing, all fishing super heavy current, hooking fish that are like tying into a freight train. It's incredible. It's a really neat experience, and I don't know. I'm going to make my kids learn how to do it. I'm not going to let them just fish with me out of the boat. We're going to start going up in there. They're not quite old. But yeah, my kids aren't quite old enough to do that yet, so they will be soon. So I'm going to make sure they learn how to use the little salmon and drift fishing, standing on the bank. That way I don't raise a bunch of kids that are just, privileged about being in a boat all the time just because I have that. So, but anyway, with that being said, I'm going to dig out old Trusty here. There we go. Heavy action, 8.5 foot, heavy, fast action. G Loomis salmon rod. This is the old GL2. They don't even make these anymore, unfortunately. The GL2, this is one of the best ever made too. The 12 to 25, extra fast, mag heavy. Or no, this is the mag heavy. Absolutely incredible drift rod when you need power. Minimum 30-pound mono. Sometimes in the little salmon, there's spots where you need 40 or 50. That's just the way it is. I don't necessarily like those spots. Most of the spots I've always fished, 30-pound mono has been perfect. Really simple setup. Swivel. Big chunk of lead. A lot of times you're going to need 3-4 ounces. And then a 3-aught Gamakatsu octopus hook. A lot of times we'll put a tuft of yarn in there, and then I'll fish a ball of eggs or a tuna ball on there. And that's it. And down there, it's all about just getting in line, getting in the hole, figuring out where those fish are moving up through, and having fun. And remembering that it's crazy busy, and everybody's there just because they love to catch salmon. So, and that's just the way it's going to be. But yeah, hey, and then here's a little tidbit. So, my heavy current, popular, crowded fishery setup is a big reel spooled with 30-pound mono. Please, guys, I know that there's lots of guys that'll say, hey, braids great, braids this, braids that. In a really crowded fishery, running braid can become an issue. And the reason it can is because a lot of times some guys will come in, they won't be geared up quite right, and they'll be running light braid, or they'll get it hung up. The biggest problem is when somebody in a popular hole gets a big chunk of braid hung up, the next thing you know, it's when it's under tension down there and you get hung up on it, you can't break it, you can't pull it out, it stays in there, it cuts your mono, and so you can't ever get it out. So you just end up putting a big snag in the middle of a hole where everybody else is fishing. Mono will do that too, and we'll get big snags, but a lot of times we can get mono, and somebody will eventually get it out of there, and then it'll be back to going. But anyway, guys, that's my little soapbox. But yeah, you can see on this rod all the egg use stains on it. I don't even think this rod's made it. This reel's made it anymore. These are amazing. The Daiwa Lunas. So it's kind of funny when all of a sudden you're old, or you're getting. I shouldn't say old. I'm not that old. I'm only 30. What am I? 37 years old. But when all of a sudden all the stuff that you feel like's the best tackle out there is not made anymore. I don't know. I've hit that point, so I don't know. I'm sure a lot of you guys are there, but it's kind of weird. None of them not made anymed But there's lots of good options out there, guys. The thing is spend the money on a really good drift rod, a really good reel. Have yourself a salmon setup. I could troll with this if I needed to. I could fish this on anchor, and I will. I'll run quick fish on anchor on these. I absolutely love that. Yeah, but that's my quick rundown on springers. So hopefully some of you guys will have some questions about some of the stuff I talked about here, and we can get some questions going, and there'll be some videos in the future. We can do some deep dives into some of these techniques and maybe even some on-the-water stuff. So, yeah. Anyway, guys, I really appreciate you guys listening to this, watching this. It's a huge deal for us. So, if any of you guys want to subscribe to our podcast and have the ability to where you're not relying on YouTube, or I don't know if you got to commute, you got to drive, and you want to listen to us. A great way to do that is look up the Jonesin for the Outdoors podcast. It's I know it's on iTunes. It should be on Spotify. It should be at pretty much everywhere you get podcasts. So, guys, subscribe to that. Helps us out a ton. Also, make sure you subscribe to our videos here. Our channel is growing. We're so thankful. You know, the Lord has blessed us. You guys are blessing us. And we want to continue to bring you guys good content, local content, stuff that hopefully you guys find interesting. And yeah, and hey, I'm not, like I said, I'm not going to be too salesy, but if you do want to book a guided trip with us, we've got the Clearwater coming up. I've got a few days with some seats open, not very many. Barry's got some days open, so there's still some opportunity to get on the books and get some of the best salmon fishing in the world done with us. But anyway, regardless of that, you can book or not book with us. I really don't care. Actually, I do care, but I just want you guys to listen. Please ask questions. I'd love to do some deep dives into stuff. We can go into bait curing. There's so much stuff when it starts coming to salmon fishing that we just love, and we've got more salmon fisheries coming up. So tons of stuff to talk about. Anyway, guys, really appreciate you being here. God bless, and good fishing out there.